Welcome to Moment in Ministry, hosted by Pastor Steve Dameron.
Offering the pastor to pay for his health insurance rather than it coming out of his pocket and being taxable. And there are also very creative ideas you can do with a health reimbursement plans where the church is perhaps buying a large deductible but is able to set aside a fund specifically called an HRA. That's a reimbursement
plan. HRA,
not an HSA, which is something else.
Yeah,
but
so there's
an
HRA.
And those funds can be used for health care tax-free. And so the pastor can access those funds that his employer, the church, puts.
So is that a newer thing, the HRA?
It's not, but it's not very well known. And so large businesses do this all the time, where they set up a fund that is that they perhaps buy a high deductible, and they offer their employees a lower deductible, and they pay the difference.
Okay.
So the pastor, in this case, wouldn't have to pay an $8,000 deductible. Maybe he only has to pay up to $2,000, and the church would pay the difference.
And that's in that HRA.
And that's in that HRA.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so it can be put in tax-free, of course, and as long as it's used for health expenses, it can be it's tax-free. And that is a way to perhaps keep taxes low on the pastor's part.
Yeah.
And it's not an outlay. And I think of these things like the book allowance and the access to schooling and education. You could even take a special offering for things like that, and they wouldn't be money that the pastor would have to come out of his salary.
Yes. And I think also going along with that, if you had if you're not sitting down yearly, this is something you and I talked about. If you're not sitting down yearly, maybe every other year, there's a group of men, and you're sitting down with the pastor, and you're talking things through. And it's sad, but in the business world, they recognize stuff that in the church we just like, so here's your pastor, and he's pushing himself to get another degree. In the business world, they recognize that.
Yeah.
He gets bonuses and all this, but in the church it's like, well, you better.
Yeah.
You know what, you little sloth, you better be studying. Here he puts himself out, and if in the world they recognize that sometimes we don't have to follow the world. But what we should do is that a good thing for your pastor? Biblically, is it good that he's adding to his faith and he's increasing as following in Christ's footsteps to push himself? Well, then every couple of years, maybe you say, you know what, we really appreciate that about our pastor. Let's give him a bonus.
And as we would expect from any professional that we go to, a CPA or a financial advisor, you would expect us to be up on our grade and to be constantly learning.
So if I come in and you're like, hey, I don't read. So why am I giving you money?
Right.
All right. So the health insurance, that's one world. So the one that's a little trickier is this investment. So, and I know you have a lot of expertise in that. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the setting up a 403B? Is there some requirements of that, stuff like that? And then we'll put his information there, because then you can just email him tons of questions. All right.
So there are traditional IRAs, and that might be a way to start. I would suggest for anyone to consider the Roth IRA because it's tax-free when you pull the money out. So there's no comparison to the Roth IRA. And so there are traditional IRAs, and you can put $6,000 or $7,000 a year into that, or for both you and your wife as a pastor, and depending on your age. And then if you can also go into a little more, I should say, complicated things, but they're easy to set up, and that would be the 403B, which is the equivalent of the 401k that many people would have in a church. So the 401k is for for-profit organizations. 403B is for nonprofit, schools, hospitals, churches. And that is a way to put money away, and the church then can match another avenue here. The church can match actually as much as they would like. They can match 2-3% or more of what the pastor puts in, or they can even choose to put money in when the pastor can't put money in. And so the 403B is a great vehicle for retirement savings. And then as your staff grows, as you bring on an assistant or a teacher, they can participate in that also. And that benefit is a huge blessing to people. Say that who maybe the husband that works in the world doesn't have a good retirement plan.
Yeah.
But the wife working as a teacher in your church, in our church, can fund this 403b, and so that's a great vehicle. And so those suggestions are in a sense all the same, but the 403b would be a group product.
Okay.
And that's
So hopefully that helps understanding that, and you can match different things. I think that covers a lot of what we were going to kind of go through with this one, with the pastor and his finances. The last thing I was going to mention is this idea of Social Security.
Yes.
Okay, so there was a big movement, and we talked about that in one of our videos, is to move to bounce out. And what I would recommend, both you and I strongly would recommend, is that you cannot, this is not one of those, my wife has a cookbook at the house, and it's for the crock pot, and it's called Fix It and Forget It, okay? You cannot do this with the pastor and his finances.
Right.
Every year, every other year, you need to be sitting down thinking this through, because all right, you've been in the business over 30 years, and it would take volumes to list out all the changes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's changes and changes and changes. So you need to have people that are kind of in the know, and you're talking about it. And I believe that if a church is up front with their pastor, and they're also trying to do their dead level best, their pastor appreciates it, and I think God blesses that. And I don't think you're going to get caught off guard. I mean, and when it comes to Social Security, like even I'm working on it. All right, I've opted out, but like you and I have been talking about it, you can log on SSA.gov.
Yes,
you can make your own account, and you can see how many quarters you had. So I've done that. I've got 28 out of 40 quarters. Okay, well, I have enough time, and I sat down with a CPA close by. We ran through, talked it all through, and she had a really creative idea of how to come up with some extra quarters.
Yeah.
All right, well, my recommendation is sit down with somebody that's pretty knowledgeable. She has other pastor clients, and she knew exactly the quarter thing and all that. Really within 5 or 6 years, I think I'm going to be fine. And it's not breaking the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hurting me. I'm not having to go out and come up with all kinds of extra jobs. Because what I want to do is work here. And this is my love. My calling is ministry. So I think if you do that and you work together and you talk it through, rather than and I think you got to be careful of making hasty decisions on this.
I think it's really important, as Lee said, not to assume anything, and we should all go to SSA.gov and see where we stand. It not only has to do, we were always suspicious of Social Security, like, well,
right.
It won't be there, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to be there in some form.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that it's on track, but not only for Social Security, because that also triggers what's available to you at 65 for Medicare.
Yes, so exactly.
For both reasons, it's very important to know where you stand and then talk to a professional. And I would say to what you're saying is, I think that as a layman in the church, we need to make it our business to know if there are needs.
Yes.
And that is maybe the basis for all this. And make sure that review, like you said, the deacons are sitting down every couple of years and just making sure that we're on track and we're taking care of the needs.
Yep.
And I just think that's important, as you mentioned. And find a professional, a CPA, or a financial advisor. Preferably that's a Christian, but there are good professionals, good honest people out there that can help you through the speed bumps and the different problems you may come through.
All right, and I saw that last one, the resource.
Yes, there are several good resources, but there is a layman in Ohio, a good man. His name is Bob Valier. And we're going to post his information, but he and his organization, they counsel churches and deacon boards on pay packages and retirement and benefits and that kind of thing. And I would recommend him. I've used him myself, and they do a good job, and they know what they're doing.
Okay.
Someone you can trust.
All right, so I know it's a little longer and it's a little tedious. All right, but pastors, if you're watching it, this could be something you could use even for your layman. I pray that it could be a help a help to the pastor and his finances.
Welcome to Moment in Ministry, hosted by Pastor Steve Dameron.